Cleopatra. Learn English through history, B1 level. Introduction. When people hear the name Cleopatra, they often think about beauty and romance. They imagine a queen with gold jewelry, dark eyes, and a dramatic love story. But Cleopatra was not only a symbol of love. She was a leader. She was a strategist. She was a survivor. She lived in a time when the world was ruled by powerful men and violent armies. She lived in a time when a wrong decision could destroy a kingdom. And she ruled one of the richest countries on earth, Egypt. Cleopatra did not inherit an easy life. She was born into a royal family where betrayal was normal. Where brothers and sisters fought for the throne. Where rulers were removed, exiled, or killed. Her story is not simply a love story. It is a story about power and politics. Enemies inside your own family. War between nations. Propaganda and reputation. Courage under pressure. And the price of being the last ruler of a great civilization. Cleopatra was the last active queen of ancient Egypt. After her, Egypt became part of the Roman Empire. After her, the world changed forever. In this story, you will learn how Cleopatra became queen while still young. Lost her throne and fought to get it back. Met Julius Caesar and used that alliance to survive. Built a new future for Egypt. Fell into the final war against Rome. And made a final choice that shocked the world. And while you listen, you will also practice English. This story is written in clear B1 English. It uses simple vocabulary, short sentences, and clear logic. You can follow the meaning and learn naturally. So take a deep breath. Get comfortable. And let us begin the true story of Cleopatra. Part 1: A Princess in a Dangerous Palace. Cleopatra was born in 69 BC in the city of Alexandria. Alexandria was not a small town. It was one of the most important cities in the ancient world. It had large temples, busy markets, beautiful palaces, and a famous library that collected knowledge from many countries. Alexandria was a city of books, ships, trade, and ideas. But Cleopatra's world was not peaceful. She was born into the Ptolemaic dynasty, a royal family that ruled Egypt for almost 300 years. Her family was not originally Egyptian. They were Greek. Long before Cleopatra, Alexander the Great conquered Egypt. After Alexander died, his empire was divided. One of his generals, Ptolemy, took Egypt and became its ruler. This is why Cleopatra's family spoke Greek at home. They lived like Greek kings and queens. And many of them did not care about Egyptian traditions. But Cleopatra was different. From a young age, she learned something important. If you want to rule Egypt, you must understand Egypt. Cleopatra studied hard. She learned many subjects: reading and writing, history and politics, philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, and public speaking. But the most powerful skill she developed was language. Cleopatra learned Egyptian. This sounds simple, but it was very rare for her family. Most Ptolemaic rulers never learned the language of the people. They ruled from the palace and spoke Greek. Cleopatra wanted to speak directly to Egyptians. She wanted to appear as a true queen of Egypt, not just a foreign ruler. Some historians believe she spoke many languages, maybe 7 or more. This made her stronger than many kings around her. But education could not remove the danger. Because inside her palace, the real law was not education. The real law was power. The Ptolemaic family had a dark reputation. In that family, brothers fought brothers. Sisters fought sisters. Rulers married inside the family. And betrayal was common. A royal child did not grow up with safety. A royal child grew up with fear and control. Cleopatra saw what power looked like. She saw that people smiled in public, and planned attacks in private. She learned to read faces. She learned to watch quietly. She learned to think ahead. Her father was Ptolemy XII. He was not a strong ruler. He had many enemies, and he depended on Rome. Rome was the rising power of the Mediterranean world. Rome had strong armies and strong ambitions. Egypt was rich, but Egypt was vulnerable. Ptolemy XII paid Rome money to keep his throne. That meant one painful truth. Egypt was not fully free. When Cleopatra was a teenager, she understood that the future of Egypt depended on Rome. If Rome supported Egypt, Egypt could survive. If Rome turned against Egypt, Egypt could fall. Then, when Cleopatra was about 18 years old, her father died. And in one moment, her life became much more dangerous. She became queen. But she did not become queen alone. In her family system, a woman could not rule by herself. At least, not officially. Cleopatra had to share the throne with her younger brother. His name was Ptolemy XIII. He was only about 10 or 12 years old. They were forced to rule together. And according to tradition, they were also forced to marry. It was not love. It was politics. But the biggest problem was not the marriage. The biggest problem was this. Cleopatra was smart and strong. And her brother was controlled by powerful advisors. Those advisors did not want Cleopatra to rule. They wanted to control Egypt through the young king. Cleopatra quickly felt the pressure. Her decisions were questioned. Her name was removed from official documents. Her authority was attacked step by step. She tried to stay calm. She tried to negotiate. But her enemies were not interested in peace. They wanted the throne. And soon, Cleopatra was pushed out of Alexandria. Imagine this moment. A young queen. A powerful title. A great palace. And suddenly, exile. Suddenly, uncertainty. Suddenly, survival. Cleopatra left the city and escaped to the desert and then to Syria. Many people would have given up. But Cleopatra was not many people. In exile, she did not cry and wait. She planned. She gathered loyal supporters. She contacted generals. She collected money. She built an army. She prepared to return. Because Cleopatra believed one thing. A throne is not given. A throne is taken. And while she was preparing her comeback, a storm was already moving toward Egypt. A storm from Rome. A man was coming. A man whose name was already famous across the world. Julius Caesar. And his arrival would change Cleopatra's destiny. Part 2: Exile, Strategy, and the Return to Power. When Cleopatra was forced to leave Alexandria, she lost her palace. She lost her official position. She lost public control. But she did not lose her ambition. She understood something very clearly. If she wanted to return to the throne, she needed 3 things: money, soldiers, and a powerful ally. In Syria, Cleopatra began building support. She contacted loyal Egyptian officers. She negotiated with foreign leaders. She promised rewards to generals who would fight for her. She was still very young, around 20 years old. But she acted like an experienced ruler. Meanwhile, in Egypt, her younger brother Ptolemy XIII was controlled by 3 main advisors: Pothinus, Achillas, Theodotus. These men did not want Cleopatra back. They controlled the young king. They controlled the army. And they controlled the palace. But they were also afraid. Because Egypt was not alone in the world. Rome was watching. And Rome was powerful. At this time, Rome was in civil war. 2 great Roman leaders were fighting for control. Julius Caesar. Pompey the Great. Pompey was once very powerful. But now Caesar was winning. After losing a battle, Pompey fled to Egypt. He hoped the Egyptian king would protect him. But the advisors around Ptolemy XIII made a terrible mistake. They believed that killing Pompey would impress Caesar. So when Pompey arrived in Egypt, they murdered him. They cut off his head and sent it to Caesar as a gift. But Caesar was not pleased. He was shocked. Even though Pompey was his enemy, he was still a Roman leader. Caesar believed this murder was dishonorable. When Caesar arrived in Alexandria in 48 BC, he was angry. He decided to stay in Egypt and control the situation. This moment was critical. Cleopatra saw opportunity. Rome was divided. Egypt was unstable. And Caesar, the most powerful man in the world, was now inside her country. If she could win his support, she could win everything. But there was a problem. Her enemies controlled the city. She could not simply walk into the palace. She needed something bold. And Cleopatra was not afraid of bold moves. According to a famous story, Cleopatra had herself wrapped inside a large carpet or cloth sack. Her servant carried the bundle into Caesar's private room. When the cloth was opened, Cleopatra appeared in front of him. This story may be partly legend. But historians agree on one thing. Cleopatra found a dramatic and intelligent way to meet Caesar. She did not send a letter. She did not wait for permission. She created a moment. Caesar was impressed. Not only because she was beautiful, but because she was confident, intelligent, and fearless. She spoke to him directly. She explained how her brother's advisors had taken control. She explained that she was the legitimate ruler. She promised stability and loyalty to Rome. Caesar understood something important. Egypt was extremely rich. It produced grain. It had gold. It had trade routes. Rome depended on Egyptian grain to feed its population. Caesar needed Egypt stable and friendly. He decided to support Cleopatra. This decision led to war. The war in Alexandria. The conflict between Cleopatra and her brother turned into open battle. Caesar brought Roman soldiers. Cleopatra gathered her supporters. Her brother's advisors gathered Egyptian troops. The fighting happened inside Alexandria. The streets were dangerous. The harbor was full of ships ready for battle. At one point, fires destroyed parts of the city. Some historians believe part of the famous Library of Alexandria was damaged during this conflict. Caesar was trapped for a time inside the palace. But Roman reinforcements arrived. After months of fighting, Caesar and Cleopatra won. Ptolemy XIII tried to escape. He drowned in the Nile River. Cleopatra had defeated her brother. But this victory was not only military. It was political. She had shown Rome that she was capable. She had shown Caesar that she was loyal. She had shown Egypt that she could survive. After the war, Cleopatra officially became queen again. But according to tradition, she married another younger brother, Ptolemy XIV. He was only a teenager. Again, this was not real partnership. Cleopatra was the true ruler. She now had Roman protection. She had Roman support. And she had something even stronger. A personal relationship with Julius Caesar. Soon, Cleopatra gave birth to a son. She named him Caesar Ion, meaning Little Caesar. She claimed that Julius Caesar was the father. This was a powerful message. If Caesar recognized the child, Egypt's future would be protected. But politics in Rome were complicated. Caesar never officially declared Caesar Ion his heir. Instead, he adopted his great-nephew Octavian. Cleopatra may not have fully understood how important that decision would become. For now, she focused on rebuilding Egypt. Cleopatra as a ruler. Cleopatra did not waste time. She worked hard to stabilize Egypt's economy. She reduced corruption. She reorganized taxes. She improved trade with neighboring countries. She presented herself as the goddess Isis to her people. This was not just religion. It was political strategy. By connecting herself with Egyptian tradition, she became more than a foreign queen. She became a symbol of divine authority. She appeared in public ceremonies. She spoke directly to citizens. She showed confidence and strength. Egypt was stable again. But far away in Rome, new problems were forming. Because power in Rome never stays quiet for long. And in 44 BC, everything changed once more. Julius Caesar was assassinated. Cleopatra's greatest protector was gone. And her future became uncertain again. Part 3: Rome, Betrayal, and a New Alliance. After the war in Alexandria, Cleopatra was secure, but only for a moment. She knew something very important. Egypt was strong. But Rome was stronger. If Rome was stable, Egypt was safe. If Rome was in chaos, Egypt was in danger. So Cleopatra made a bold decision. She traveled to Rome. Cleopatra in Rome. Around 46 BC, Cleopatra arrived in Rome with her son, Caesar Ion. She did not come as a prisoner. She did not come as a simple visitor. She came as an ally of Julius Caesar. This was a powerful message. In Rome, Cleopatra stayed in one of Caesar's private villas. This was not normal. Roman society was conservative. Roman women were expected to behave modestly. Roman politicians were expected to show loyalty to Roman traditions. Cleopatra was different. She was foreign. She was a queen. She was confident. And many Romans did not like her. They saw her as dangerous. They saw her as ambitious. They saw her as a woman who influenced Caesar too much. Some Romans feared that Caesar wanted to make himself king. Rome hated the idea of kings. Rome had removed its kings hundreds of years before. And now Caesar was building statues of himself, accepting honors, increasing his power. Cleopatra's presence in Rome made people nervous. There were even rumors that Caesar might move the capital to Alexandria. There were rumors that he might recognize Caesar Ion as his official son. No one knows how true these rumors were. But fear was real. And fear can create violence. The assassination of Caesar. On March 15, 44 BC, a day later called the Ides of March, Julius Caesar was murdered. He was stabbed by a group of senators inside the Roman Senate. Among the attackers was a man he trusted, Brutus. The assassination shocked the world. Cleopatra suddenly lost her strongest protector. In one moment, everything changed. Rome became unstable again. Political chaos returned. Cleopatra understood the danger immediately. She left Rome quickly and returned to Egypt. Because in times of political violence, a foreign queen is never safe. Back in Egypt. Back in Alexandria, Cleopatra faced new uncertainty. She had lost Caesar. Her son Caesar Ion was still very young. And Rome was now controlled by new leaders. 3 powerful Roman men formed an alliance. They were called the Second Triumvirate. The leaders were Octavian, Caesar's adopted son; Mark Antony; Lepidus. They divided control of Roman territories. Octavian controlled the west. Mark Antony controlled the east. And Egypt was in the east. This meant Cleopatra would now deal with Mark Antony. But first, she had to secure her position at home. Soon after returning to Egypt, her younger brother Ptolemy XIV died. Many historians believe Cleopatra may have removed him. We cannot know for certain. But after his death, Cleopatra made Caesar on her co-ruler. She presented him as the son of Julius Caesar. This strengthened her political image. She was no longer just a queen. She was the mother of Caesar's child. And that gave her power. Mark Antony calls for Cleopatra. In 41 BC, Mark Antony summoned Cleopatra to meet him in the city of Tarsus. He wanted to question her. He suspected she may have supported his enemies during Rome's civil war. This meeting was dangerous. If Antony saw her as an enemy, he could remove her. If he saw her as weak, he could control her. Cleopatra understood the importance of first impressions. And she prepared carefully. When she traveled to Tarsus, she did not arrive quietly. She arrived in a golden barge on the river. Her ship was decorated beautifully. Purple sails, silver oars, perfume in the air. She dressed as the goddess Aphrodite. Musicians played music. Servants surrounded her. This was not just luxury. This was strategy. She did not want to appear as a nervous queen asking for protection. She wanted to appear powerful. She wanted to impress Antony before he spoke a single word. And she succeeded. Mark Antony was fascinated. He saw not just beauty, but intelligence and confidence. They began to talk. Cleopatra explained her position. She explained her loyalty to Rome. She explained her need for stability. Antony saw opportunity. He needed money. He needed support for his military campaigns. He needed Egypt's wealth. Cleopatra could provide that. And so began one of the most famous alliances in history. Politics or love? Many people think Cleopatra and Antony had only a romantic relationship. But their alliance was political first. Cleopatra needed Roman protection. Antony needed Egyptian wealth. They spent the winter together in Alexandria. They organized banquets. They held public celebrations. But behind the luxury, they made strategic plans. In 40 BC, Cleopatra gave birth to twins. Alexander Helios. Cleopatra Selene. Later, she would have another son with Antony. Their partnership was growing. But in Rome, this relationship created tension. Octavian did not trust Antony. And Octavian was patient. He waited. He watched. He collected political arguments against Antony. Because in Rome, reputation is power. And soon, Cleopatra would become the center of Roman propaganda. But for now, Cleopatra believed she had secured Egypt's future. She had Roman protection, powerful children, and influence in Eastern politics. But peace built on politics is never permanent. And the final conflict was coming. Part 4: Power, Propaganda, and the Road to War. At first, the alliance between Cleopatra and Mark Antony seemed strong. Antony needed money for his military campaigns. Cleopatra needed Roman support to protect Egypt. Their goals were connected. But politics is never simple. And in Rome, another man was watching carefully. His name was Octavian. Antony's campaigns in the east. Mark Antony was responsible for the eastern part of the Roman world. This meant he had to deal with Parthia, a powerful empire to the east. Parthia had defeated Roman armies before. Antony wanted victory. Victory would increase his reputation. Victory would silence his enemies. Victory would make him stronger than Octavian. Cleopatra supported Antony financially. Egypt provided gold, ships, soldiers, supplies. This made their alliance deeper. But Antony's campaign against Parthia was not successful. He lost many soldiers. He lost equipment. He lost reputation. Back in Rome, Octavian used this failure carefully. He did not attack immediately. He waited. Because Octavian understood something. You do not win by shouting. You win by shaping the story. The donations of Alexandria. In 34 BC, Antony made a dramatic decision. In a public ceremony in Alexandria, he distributed territories to Cleopatra and their children. This event became known as the Donations of Alexandria. Antony declared Cleopatra as Queen of Kings, Caesarion as the true son of Julius Caesar, and their children as rulers of different eastern territories. This was powerful. But it was also dangerous. In Rome, many people were shocked. To Romans, it looked like Antony was giving Roman territories to a foreign queen. It looked like he was placing Egypt above Rome. Octavian saw opportunity. He presented Antony as a man controlled by Cleopatra. He said Antony had become weak. He said Antony was no longer loyal to Rome. He said Cleopatra wanted to rule the Roman world. Whether this was true or not did not matter. Perception matters more than truth in politics. Octavian built a narrative. Antony was not a Roman hero anymore. He was a man under the influence of a foreign queen. Cleopatra became the enemy in Roman propaganda. She was described as dangerous, manipulative, exotic, immoral. This was political strategy. By attacking Cleopatra's image, Octavian weakened Antony's support. Many Romans began to fear that Egypt might control Rome. And fear creates support for war. The final break. In 32 BC, the political tension reached a breaking point. Octavian declared war. But officially, he did not declare war against Antony. He declared war against Cleopatra. This was clever. If he attacked Antony directly, it would be civil war. But if he attacked Cleopatra, it became a foreign war. Roman citizens could support a war against a foreign queen more easily than a war against another Roman leader. Antony had to choose. He chose Cleopatra. he stood beside her. Their forces prepared for battle. The Battle of Actium. The decisive moment came in 31 BC. The battle took place near Actium, on the western coast of Greece. Octavian's general, Agrippa, commanded a strong fleet. Antony and Cleopatra combined their ships. This was not just a military conflict. This was a battle for the future of the Mediterranean world. The fleets met in open water. The battle was long and chaotic. Ships crashed into each other. Fire spread. Smoke filled the sky. At a critical moment, Cleopatra's ship suddenly turned and sailed away. Antony saw this. And instead of staying in battle, he followed her. This decision changed history. Without Antony's leadership, his fleet lost organization. Octavian's forces won. Historians still debate Cleopatra's decision. Was it panic? Was it planned retreat? Was it strategic escape? We cannot know for sure. But the result was clear. Antony and Cleopatra lost. And now Octavian was moving toward Egypt. A kingdom in danger. After Actium, Antony and Cleopatra returned to Alexandria. They tried to prepare for defense. They tried to gather support. But their power was weakening. Many allies abandoned them. Some Roman officers switched sides. Fear was growing. Cleopatra understood that defeat was possible. She began preparing a monument, a large tomb for herself. She stored treasures inside. She thought about the future. She thought about survival. But she also thought about dignity. Because for a queen like Cleopatra, defeat was not only political. It was personal. And Octavian was coming. Part 5. The Fall of a Queen. After the defeat at Actium, Cleopatra and Mark Antony returned to Alexandria. But Alexandria was no longer the center of power. It was now a city waiting for invasion. Octavian's army was moving closer. Every day brought new reports. Another ally had surrendered. Another general had switched sides. Another city had opened its gates. Cleopatra understood the reality. The world she had tried to protect was collapsing. The last days of Mark Antony. Mark Antony tried to keep his dignity. He still believed he could defend Egypt. He trained soldiers. He prepared ships. He spoke to officers. But the truth was clear. Many soldiers no longer believed in victory. Some deserted. Some secretly contacted Octavian. When Octavian's forces finally reached Alexandria in 30 BC, resistance was weak. Antony's remaining army could not stop them. Then something tragic happened. Antony received false news. He was told that Cleopatra had taken her own life. He believed she was dead. He felt defeated, not only as a general, but as a man. He had lost the war. He believed he had lost the woman he loved. He believed his future was gone. In despair, Antony chose to end his life. He fell on his sword. But he did not die immediately. When Cleopatra heard what had happened, she sent her servants to bring him to her. Antony was carried to the monument where Cleopatra had locked herself inside. He was lifted through a window. There, in her arms, he died. This moment was powerful and tragic. Two rulers. Two powerful figures. Now defeated. But Cleopatra was still alive. And Octavian still wanted her. Octavian's plan. Octavian did not want Cleopatra dead immediately. He wanted to capture her. He wanted to take her to Rome. He planned to display her as a prisoner in his victory parade. In Roman tradition, defeated enemies were shown publicly. They were forced to walk in chains through the streets. This would show Rome's power. But Cleopatra was not a simple enemy. She was a queen. She had ruled Egypt for over 20 years. She had negotiated with Caesar. She had built an alliance with Antony. She had shaped the politics of the Mediterranean. To be displayed as a prisoner would destroy her dignity. Cleopatra understood this. Cleopatra meets Octavian. Octavian met Cleopatra in person. She tried to negotiate. She offered him treasure. She offered loyalty. She offered political cooperation. Octavian listened. He was calm. He was disciplined. He did not show strong emotion. But he had already decided. Egypt would become a Roman province. Caesarion, Cleopatra's son, was a danger. If Caesarion was recognized as the son of Julius Caesar, he could challenge Octavian's authority. Soon after, Caesarion was captured and executed. Cleopatra lost her son. She lost Antony. She lost her army. She lost her kingdom. But she still had one thing. Choice. The final decision. Cleopatra knew Octavian's plan. She knew she would be taken to Rome. She knew she would walk in chains. She knew history would remember her as defeated. She refused that future. On August 1230 BC, Cleopatra made her final decision. The exact details are uncertain. The most famous story says she allowed a venomous snake, an asp, to bite her. Other historians suggest poison hidden in a small object. We cannot know for sure. But we know this. Cleopatra chose death over humiliation. She was about 39 years old. With her death, the Ptolemaic dynasty ended. Egypt became part of the Roman Empire. Octavian became Augustus, the first Roman emperor. The age of independent Egypt was over. The end of an era. Cleopatra's death marked the end of ancient Egypt as a sovereign kingdom. For centuries, Egypt had been powerful. It had built pyramids. It had ruled trade routes. It had shaped culture and religion. Now it became part of Rome. But Cleopatra's story did not disappear. In fact, it grew. Roman writers described her as dangerous and seductive. Later historians questioned those stories. Was she truly manipulative? Or was she simply intelligent and strategic? Was she emotional? Or was she political? Cleopatra became a symbol. Some saw her as a villain. Some saw her as a tragic hero. Some saw her as a strong female leader in a male world. The truth is complex. But one thing is certain. She changed history. Part 6: Legacy, Myths, and the Real Cleopatra. When Cleopatra died, many people believed her story was over. But in reality, her story was just beginning. Because after her death, others started to tell her story. And the way people tell a story can change how the world remembers a person. Who controlled the story? After Cleopatra's death, Octavian became Augustus, the first Roman emperor. He had won the war. He had defeated Antony. He had taken Egypt. But he also needed something else. He needed to control the narrative. In politics, controlling the story is as important as winning the battle. Octavian presented himself as the defender of Rome, the protector of Roman tradition, the man who saved Rome from foreign influence. And Cleopatra became part of that story. She was described as a dangerous temptress, a foreign queen who tried to control Roman leaders, a symbol of luxury and corruption. This image was powerful. And it stayed for centuries. Roman historians often wrote from a Roman perspective. They did not want to show Cleopatra as equal to Roman leaders. They wanted to show her as a threat that had been defeated. But history is not only one voice. Over time, scholars began to ask new questions. Was Cleopatra really just a romantic figure? Or was she something more? The real Cleopatra. Modern historians now see Cleopatra differently. She was not only beautiful. In fact, ancient coins show her face clearly. She did not look like later Hollywood versions. Her nose was strong. Her chin was sharp. Her features were realistic. Her power did not come from beauty alone. It came from intelligence. She spoke multiple languages, understood economics, negotiated with the most powerful men in the world, ruled for more than 2 decades. That is not accidental success. That is leadership. Cleopatra ruled during one of the most unstable periods in ancient history. Rome was growing rapidly. Civil wars were constant. Political alliances changed quickly. For over 20 years, she kept Egypt independent. This alone shows her strength. A woman in a man's world. Cleopatra ruled in a world dominated by men. Most powerful leaders were male. Most generals were male. Most political decisions were made by men. Yet Cleopatra sat at the center of international politics. She negotiated directly with Julius Caesar. She formed an alliance with Mark Antony. She led armies. She made economic reforms. She influenced trade. This was extremely rare. Her gender made her both powerful and vulnerable. Powerful, because she could use charm and intelligence. Vulnerable, because enemies could attack her reputation. And they did. Octavian used her identity against her. He described her as emotional. He described her as manipulative. He suggested that Antony had lost his Roman strength because of her. This was propaganda. It was easier to blame a foreign queen than to admit Roman political failure. But Cleopatra was not simply a romantic character in someone else's story. She was an active player. She made decisions. She took risks. She shaped events, culture and symbolism. Cleopatra also understood symbolism. She connected herself with the goddess Isis. In Egyptian religion, Isis represented motherhood, power, magic, protection. By presenting herself as Isis, Cleopatra built a strong image. She was not just a political ruler. She was a spiritual figure. She appeared in public ceremonies wearing traditional Egyptian clothing. This was unusual for her dynasty. Earlier Ptolemaic rulers had kept Greek traditions. Cleopatra respected Egyptian culture. This increased her support among Egyptians. She understood identity. She understood that power is not only military. It is emotional. It is symbolic. How history remembers her. For centuries, Cleopatra became a character in plays and books. William Shakespeare wrote a famous play called Antony and Cleopatra. Painters showed her dramatic death with a snake. Movies presented her as glamorous and mysterious. Every generation reimagined her. Some saw her as a tragic romantic heroine. Some saw her as a manipulative politician. Some saw her as a symbol of female power. But the real Cleopatra was likely more complex than any simple description. She was intelligent, ambitious, strategic, emotional, courageous, human. She lived in extreme circumstances. She made difficult decisions. Some decisions worked. Some failed. But she never acted passively. She acted. And action defines leaders. The final queen of Egypt. Cleopatra was the last ruler of an independent Egypt. After her death, Egypt became part of the Roman Empire for centuries. The world shifted toward Roman dominance. Her life marks the end of one era and the beginning of another. She stands at the crossroads of history. Between ancient Egypt, Greek influence, and Roman Empire. Few individuals stand at such historical turning points. That is why Cleopatra remains important. Not because of romance, but because of impact. She influenced Roman politics, Egyptian stability, Mediterranean trade, and the balance of power. Even today, her name is recognized globally. That is not accidental. That is legacy. Conclusion: the queen who refused to be forgotten. Cleopatra's life was not simple. She was not born into peace. She was not born into safety. She was born into a palace full of tension and danger. She did not inherit a stable kingdom. She inherited a fragile one. She did not rule during calm years. She ruled during one of the most violent political periods in ancient history. And yet, she survived for more than 20 years as queen. She fought her own family. She negotiated with the most powerful Roman leaders. She rebuilt Egypt's economy. She maintained independence longer than many expected. Cleopatra made bold choices. Some were successful. Some were risky. Some led to victory. Some led to defeat. But she never chose passivity. She did not wait for history to decide her future. She stepped into history. Her alliance with Julius Caesar saved her throne. Her alliance with Mark Antony protected Egypt for years. Her political strategy delayed Roman control. Even in defeat, she made one final decision, a decision that shaped how history would remember her. She refused humiliation. She refused to become a symbol of weakness. She chose control over her final moment. With her death, an ancient kingdom ended. But with her death, a legend began. Cleopatra became a symbol of intelligence, a symbol of courage, a symbol of female leadership, a symbol of political strategy, and a symbol of how power and reputation shape history. She lived in a world dominated by men. But she was not controlled by that world. She influenced it. And that is why we still speak about her more than 2,000 years later. 7 Life Lessons from Cleopatra. Now let us look at what we can learn from her story. Not as a myth. Not as a romantic tale. But as real lessons about life, leadership, and decision-making. 1. Education is power. Cleopatra spoke multiple languages. She studied philosophy, politics, and economics. She understood culture. Her intelligence made her strong. Beauty fades. Titles disappear. But knowledge remains. In today's world, education is still one of the strongest forms of power. Invest in learning. It creates long-term strength. 2. Control the narrative. Octavian understood propaganda. He shaped how Rome saw Cleopatra. But Cleopatra also understood image. She presented herself as Isis. She created powerful public impressions. She used symbolism. In modern life, your story matters. How you present yourself matters. Do not allow others to define you without your voice. 3. Build strategic alliances. Cleopatra survived because she built alliances. With Caesar. With Antony. She understood that isolation is weakness. You do not always win alone. Choose your allies wisely. Relationships can protect you during unstable times. 4. Adapt to changing circumstances. Cleopatra lived during civil wars and political chaos. Rome changed quickly. Alliances shifted. Power moved constantly. She adapted. She negotiated when needed. She fought when necessary. In life, change is constant. Rigid thinking breaks under pressure. Adaptability creates survival. 5. Take bold action when necessary. Cleopatra did not wait quietly in exile. She gathered an army. She did not send a simple message to Caesar. She created a dramatic meeting. She understood timing. Sometimes bold action changes everything. Caution is important. But fear can destroy opportunity. 6. Reputation can be weaponized. Octavian turned Cleopatra into a symbol of threat. He used fear to unite Rome. Reputation is powerful. It can build leaders. It can destroy leaders. Protect your integrity. Because once a negative image spreads, it is difficult to control. 7. Dignity is a choice. In her final moment, Cleopatra made a decision. She could not control the outcome of war. She could not control Rome. But she could control how her story ended. Dignity is not about winning. It is about how you respond to defeat. Sometimes strength is not in survival. Sometimes strength is in choice. Final ending, a voice across history. Imagine Alexandria at sunset. The sea is calm. The palace is quiet. The era of the pharaohs has ended. But somewhere in history, Cleopatra still stands. Not as a perfect figure. Not as a villain. Not as a romantic fantasy. But as a leader who faced impossible odds. She lived in a world of ambition and violence. She understood power. She understood human nature. She understood risk. And she acted. History is not shaped only by armies. It is shaped by decisions. Cleopatra's decisions changed the direction of the Mediterranean world. Her life reminds us. Power is fragile. Alliances are temporary. Reputation can define destiny. But courage leaves a mark. More than 2,000 years later, her name still lives. That is not an accident. That is impact. And now, as you finish listening to this story, remember. History is not only about the past. It is about human nature. It is about leadership. It is about choice. Cleopatra's kingdom ended. But her story never did.